Okay, Alexandra, let's answer the questions from our live stream with Brian at the New Atlas and Gonzalo Lira. And let's begin with the new Joe, who says, please have Barnes and Brian to talk China for me.
Yeah, fun day.
Thank you for that. Summer of 1970. Thank you for that super sticker. EW says Gonzalo and Brian set up Rumble accounts. Very true. Thank you very much, EW. Rubia Pell says, everyone's asking where is Mr. Lira? So good to see you there. What's going on in Kharkov now?
Well, I think he told us quite a bit, actually.
How things are. Yeah, he told us what's going on in Kharkov. Commander Crossfire says, putting aside strategic and tactical concerns, the withdrawal from Kharkov is shameful to abandon civilians to the NAZIs. You can't forget these are people's lives, not just pieces on a chessboard.
Absolutely. Now, can I just say I agree with that? I mean, I understand why it was done. As various people are pointing out, we on the Duran were the first people, the absolute first channel to say that the Russians might decide to pull out of Zizium. We didn't say that they would do that, but we said that they might do that. So we understand why it was done. But abandoning people in that way was terrible. And I don't disagree with the word that you've used. I'm also going to say something else, which is as night follows day, we're now getting atrocity stories as well. And I mean, that is completely predictable and entirely to be expected.
Respergu says Russia has weird military tactics.
No, I don't think they're weird military tactics. I'm going to say what I think. I think that with the way the Russians are conducting this operation, it's absolutely clear that the political leadership has set out the main, the framework, and it's given the military people complete freedom to do whatever they think is appropriate, given that political framework. So if it means abandoning ground, they'll abandon ground, and there's no pushback, as far as I can see, from the political leaders to prevent it. Now, I have to say, I don't know myself that that's altogether wise, partly for the reasons we've discussed in the previous programme, but also because of the overall effect it has, both in Russia, in Ukraine, in the areas that, the Russians are saying they want to liberate, and of course, globally.
Monica says, PSYOPs operations of NATO. Is this why Russia remains silent? Because of comment would play into the narrative. Was the power outage not eloquent in its silence?
I understand that, and I follow the logic of this, but I'm going to say again, I think if you remain silent, completely silent, then of course you're leaving your own people to guess and wonder what it is you're doing and what you're thinking. And in the hours when this pullout from Kharkov was taking place, it's not, I think, altogether exaggerated to say that there was not just anger, but even a degree of panic flying around. Now, do you really want that? Is that something which you want to allow happen? Wouldn't it have been much better to have a military spokesman properly briefed, touring the TV studios in Moscow, explaining what was going on, reassuring people, steadying nerves, telling them, this is why we're doing it, all is fine, don't worry? That would have been a much better approach. You can't take your support for your people for granted in that way. And to be honest, saying, that deception operations, it was all a great deception operation, well, that's, I'm afraid, also saying you're deceiving your own people. And I don't think that's a terribly good look. Whatever, I know I'm having some pushback from that, but that's certainly my own feeling. Mm-hmm.
Right. Days and System says, wow, thanks, GL, regarding electric trains. What took the RU so long to cut the power?
Well, I think that this has been going, we've discussed this so many times, it goes back to the original framework of the special military operation. The Russians said that they would not attack civilian infrastructure. And they've tried to stick to that up to this point. And now we're starting to see that they're gradually having to move beyond it, because that's the reality of war.
BlackRock's AX says, frack, I am poor.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Jason Murphy says, hit the like, ZZZ. Thank you very much for that, Jason. Elza says, hello, gentlemen. Gonzalo, nice to see you alive. Thank you very much for that, Elza. JF, thank you for that super chat. The Tower Man Harris, thank you for that super sticker. Sparty Matt said, this NATO operation counteroffensive seems like it won't change the outcome of the war, but it definitely feels like a game changer to the conflict.
Well, I don't think, I mean, the conflict is the war. If it's not going to change the outcome, then I'm going to make a straightforward point, an observation. It's going to be completely forgotten. I'm going to give an example, a historical example, one that I happen to know of because of familial family reasons. Most people don't know about this, but Mussolini's Italian army in December 1944, shortly before the war was about to end, actually launched a successful counteroffensive in northern Italy. It recovered a lot of ground. It was much touted about, in the Axis media at the time. Who remembers it today? Just a few people like me. And this is what will happen to the Kharkov offensive if, of course, this war ends in a Russian victory. Of course, if it doesn't end in a Russian victory, then it will be seen as a game changer. But I don't personally expect that.
Zionic, thank you for that super sticker. Milan, thank you for that super sticker. Commander Crossfire says, I'm thinking Russia may not move beyond Donbass, Kherson, not even Odessa, unless some sort of dramatic escalation from the West.
Many people are now saying this. I still think that eventually they will move towards Odessa. And I will tell you something else. If they don't, there'll be a lot of very angry and disappointed people in Russia.
Ivan says, it was after I started watching Coach Red Pill, that's our Leo's old channel, in February that eventually landed me in the Durant stratosphere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Ivan. 456T123G says, what Mr. Mercouris got right is the need to end this war before war spreads like the new virus. Blessed are the peacemakers, the prophet's wife.
Absolutely.
For that.
I hold to that completely.
Bella says, gentlemen, what do you think about the recent death of the Russian energy execs? Ivan Pechorin was the latest managing director of the Corporation for the Development of the Far East and the Arctic. Reportedly fell off a boat at full speed on Saturday.
Yeah, people die. People sometimes commit suicide. People die of accidents. I don't think there's anything more to this than that. People are talking up these stories. Has anybody heard of this man before? When I say anybody, had anybody of the people who are now commenting about this heard of this person? I hadn't, and I follow Russian news very, very closely. I don't think there's anything to be seen in this. It's probably an accident. That's all it is. What's happening is that somebody's putting together all these deaths in Russia. Russia's a big country, people die there, and is packaging them up and spreading stories in the media that these are all suspicious deaths and people are all dying at the same time, and this all points to some mysterious hand being behind it. I'm afraid I don't buy it.
Danielle, thank you for that super sticker. Peter says 100. Thank you very much, Peter, for that. Danielle Modis, thank you for that super sticker. David S., thank you for that super sticker. Angry Warhawk says, will Russia parade NATO POWs through Moscow?
No. To say it straightforwardly, that would be a war crime. They're not going to do that.
Commander Crossfire says SCO has a security aspect to it, joint anti-terror operations. This, I think, will greatly strengthen Iran's internal stability, facilitating those huge economic deals made with Russia and China. This could be huge.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And by the way, I was reading the Kremlin's readout of the conversation between Putin and Ebrahim Raisi, the Iranian president, in Samarkand. And they're talking about a major political, economic treaty, which is apparently in the works intended to create a strategic partnership between Russia and Iran.
Zahir, thank you for that super sticker. Bulakov says, it was said that Napoleon fell into Europe by running amok, bullying and intimidating her way across Europe, and that he never saw a jugular he didn't go for. Sounds a lot like NATO, scorpion, frog.
It also sounds a lot like Ursula, to be honest. That's my own personal view. But no, I completely agree. I mean, I think eventually, if you do that all the time, then you will provoke a reaction. The question is, how long will that reaction take? I mean, Napoleon had a pretty long run for his money, before it all caught up with him.
Roman, thank you for that super sticker. Gerald says Putin's NATO strategy. Jamie Leo McFadden says, Gonzalez, what scares me as an American that I lived in Kharkov for 12 years before leaving is seeing how Ukrainians switch their historical beliefs, worshipping Bandera.
Well, some Ukrainians.
Thank you for that.
I'm not sure that all Ukrainians do. Carry on.
TMMY says, thank you, everyone. Appreciation for your discussion, your frank synthesis, and bold courage to speak. I've learned so much from each of you. Don't stop. And Gonzalo, we are all thinking of you. Thank you for that. Commando Crossfire says, Ukraine can't throw away people endlessly. The West can. If 1,000 Ukrainians fall taking out one Russian Jeep, it matters to the West only that the Russians have one less Jeep.
I think that this is unsustainable. I mean, I discussed this at length in this program. I don't think you can fight a war in that way. And I don't think Ukraine is fighting a war in that way. And I don't think the West can fight a war in that way either. As Brian pointed out, they're actually running out of ammunition and weapons to send. So they can't just go on sending more and more and more until they get the result they want. This is completely wrong, and it's based on a completely misunderstood realities about the war on the Eastern Front during the Second World War.
M. Wick, thank you for that awesome super chat. The different perspective said both Ukraine had to and Russia trapped them.
Well, that's possible.
Thank you for that. P. Walker says all the drafts of men from 16 to 17, a potential draft of women, only small children, and really old pensioners. Kiev has depopulated Ukraine.
Well, let's not overstate things. But my own personal view is the mobilization process is almost done. I don't think there's much manpower, military manpower left to mobilize now.
Mark Hughes says thanks. Stephen Bateman says ura. Edward Turner says, Gonzalo, how do you sleep at night in Kharkov without fearing the midnight knock on your door from the security services? Cool Ray says, a NATO with Biden in charge. Cool Ray says, a NATO with Biden in charge has a snake for a head. Roman Vasiliev says, how can Russia react on the U.S. crossing red lines?
We don't know. We don't know that they will react, but they have now said it is a red line, that if the United States supplies long-range missiles to Ukraine, the Russians will treat the United States as a party to the war. I presume that means that they will then feel free to retaliate against the US in other places, Syria perhaps, but we just don't know. And, one of the problems with the Russians is they've said many things and they haven't always followed through. And I'm afraid a lot of people will treat this as a bluff.
Denitsa says, it looks like the U.S. really believes in the movies they make, like Enemy at the Gate, one rifle with 10 bullets for 3 people, and that's how Russia won World War II.
Yes, exactly correct.
Stephen Bateman says, very sick world we live in, all these people dying to make already rich people richer.
Absolutely.
Tim Oates says, remember, Vietnam was essentially an SMO by the U.S. As long as Ukraine stays in contention and aggressive like the Viet Cong NVA and Russia Limited, it goes on forever and Russia loses.
No, I don't agree. I remember the Vietnam War extremely well. One of the fundamental problems about the Vietnam War was that the United States never really set out what its objectives in Vietnam were. the Russians have clearly set out objectives in Ukraine. They're going to want to liberate Donbass. They want demilitarization and denazification, or whatever that means, in Ukraine. The two conflicts are very different in that respect, and we must not confuse them.
Mark Hewitt says, if Western mercs are being killed in significant numbers, then political blowback will be massive.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I mean, the only word of caution I would say is that, of course, we don't know that there really are these vast numbers of Western mercs in Ukraine. But one report I saw said that in the force that attacked Kharkiv, 1 in 3 of the troops were Western mercs, which would, by the way, reinforce my view that Ukraine's manpower resources are not unlimited if it is true.
Rifi says, my YT channel, Rifi001, I criticize the leadership. Thank you very much for that. Steve, thank you for that super chat. Florentina, thank you for that super sticker. Shalendra says, what does Brian think about the AGM-888 HARM anti-radiation missiles being the new game changers against the S-300s? I don't even know how they are mated at MiG-29s.
Go to the new Atlas, which is Brian's channel, and you find that he's done a wonderful video, a whole video, on precisely this topic, which answers all your questions.
Rudolf van Racco says, the goal of Russia is a new European security structure. No missiles, no nuclear missiles east of the German-Polish border. Main battle is economical and not political.
I think there is a lot of truth to this, but having said that, you mustn't underestimate the importance of the military struggle as well.
Bauke says, if India is on board, we may see the SCO declare NATO AUKUS a terrorist organization.
No, the Indians will not go that way, not go there. I mean, that's inconceivable. They're playing a very careful game of being friends with both sides, but they're not going to go that far.
Tabernak says, is the SMO a pinning maneuver to delay the pivot?
No, I don't think it's a pinning maneuver. I think that from a Russian point of view, it's an absolutely essential thing to do. From Putin's point of view, his political prestige is heavily invested in it. It's far too big an event to be just a pinning maneuver. On the contrary, if anybody's been pinned, one has to say this, it's the Russians. I mean, they have to bring this thing to a resolution in some way, at some form. I mean, I believe they will. I believe they will emerge stronger at the end of it, but it is not a pinning maneuver.
Jahangir says, are prisoners being freed in the U.S. to supply Ukraine's army?
I haven't heard that. I mean, I don't know that that is true. I'd be surprised, actually. But, you know, anything's possible.
Kyle, thank you for that super sticker. George, thank you for that super sticker. Stephen Bateman says, why won't the merch store let me purchase Duran t-shirt with Russian flag? I don't know, I have to look at that. We can purchase the Russian flag on our store. I don't think that's a problem. No. But I'll take a look. Stephen, thank you for that super sticker. RXB, thank you for that super chat. Gel Mibson says, why is everybody wondering about these weapons deals? Yes, Putin has enough drones, artillery, but just see it as a starter deal for the relationship between two countries, as well as to show the U.S. to F off.
I think there is some truth to this, in that I think if you're talking about the deal between Iran and Russia, I think I'm increasingly coming round to the view this is a real thing. We are now starting to see what look like Iranian drones be used by the Russians. And I think partly it is intended to solidify the relationship between Iran and Russia and to signal to the world that they are indeed allies and friends. I think there is a military rationale to it as well. Russia was very late in developing drones. They've got their own drones coming, but they're not all there at the moment. And I think it's been explained to me that drones are very good for patrolling large areas like rivers, for example, the Ingulets, the Oskol. So you can keep a drone in the air, long periods of time. They can observe movements of small groups of men, which is what the Ukrainians like to do. They like to infiltrate small numbers of troops across these rivers. You can detect them with the drones and you can deal with it, the Russians don't have enough drones to do that. And I suspect that's possibly part of what's happening here.
Atmos, thank you for that super chat. Balke says, wasn't Russia going to cap oil in October?
I hadn't heard this. As far as I'm aware, the Russians are happy to export oil to whoever wants it. What the Russians have said is that if the EU imposes an oil price cap, which it looks like it will, the G7 does, then they will not abide by the oil price cap, and anybody who abides by it isn't going to get any Russian oil.
Just know, thank you for that super sticker. Balke says, Governor for Europe, Victoria Nuland, is still ruthlessly running the show behind the scenes, puppeteering Borrell, Ursula Schultz, and especially Baerbock.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that, actually. I mean, you want to see where the puppet masters are. You know, Washington, and, well, there's a place in the Alps which sometimes crops up.
Simo Bothell, Missouri says, shared this from Southeast Missouri, where we have Josh Hawley to speak for freedom. Shared also with commenters on the Burning Platform blog, where monkeys are free to chatter. Thank you for that. Four Souls says, in Estonia, it's not only factories preparing to shut down due to extreme electricity bills, it's churches and shelters going down as well.
Oh, my goodness.
Thank you for that. Zhao Rui says, super sticker. Thank you, Zhao, for that. Balke says, founded on September 5th, OPEC Plus agreed to cut oil output by 100,000 barrels per day in October.
And in fact, what I'm hearing is that they're now thinking of doing another cut and an even bigger one. And that's clearly a signal to the G7, to the US and the EU. The Saudis will not like this oil price cap idea that the EU is floating, that the G7 is floating, Yellen is floating. And I think that they are making it absolutely clear that if it is imposed, they will subvert it.
KH Saw, thank you for that super sticker. Fun Facts Tube says, keep up the great work, gentlemen. Mr. Wonderful says, virtue signaling won't help when people are cold, hungry, and broke. Change in Europe will happen fast, and it won't be pretty.
Oh, you may very well be right. By the way, I hope you're right. I mean, the sooner we get this all changed, the better. Because the longer it drags on, the longer the present setup in the EU continues, the more dangerous it becomes. Not just in terms of this conflict, but the general picture in Europe. The more repressive Europe becomes, the more immiserated it becomes, the more Europe's cultural values are eroded.
Jetset.1 says, as the EU, which is now seen as an enemy of Russia, is collapsing, why wouldn't the Russians be interested in drawing out the conflict in Ukraine?
Lots of people are asking that question, and it may very well be that that is the Russian game plan. I've theorized that might be the case myself. I have to say that it would be a very cynical game to play for the Russians, and bear in mind that the people who are paying the price are people in Ukraine, but also people in territories in Ukraine, which the Russians have, as they say, liberated.
Dan says, what will be spun from the West about this inevitable defeat?
They'll find something. They always do.
Reefy00 says, Google whistleblower Tarif Simon, #free Assange.
Good for her.
Thank you for that. Summer of 1970 says 400 million firearms in the hands of private citizens in the USA. Thank you for that. Zeshan, thank you for that super sticker. Eric, thank you for that super sticker. Balke Jean says Nord Stream 2 and earlier Huawei. Yeah,
absolutely. I would add, by the way, that Huawei was a success. From the US point of view, they succeeded with Huawei. I mean, I remember there was a time when it looked like it was an all-conquering, behemoth, and the US campaign against it stopped it in its tracks and has deeply destabilized the company and has affected Chinese penetration of the mobile phone and 5G markets. So don't underestimate the effectiveness of these things.
Shoemaker, thank you for that super sticker. Maria, thank you for that super sticker. The 51 Project says They Live was a documentary. Go watch it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. P. Walker says America has no allies, just those they bully less.
Very well,
that.
very well said.
Jeff Bickford, thank you for that super sticker. Spaz says unity is a threat to those who profit from strife. We've been given a false sense of unity our entire lives, so it's sometimes difficult to see that.
I agree. I still find the whole thing self-destructive to the point of lunacy almost. I mean, it really is political nihilism to destroy your own allies.
Rudolph says the U.S. imposed sanctions against any company working on Nord Stream 2 2020, including German companies. Sanctions are an act of war. See U.S. Charter.
Absolutely.
UN Charter.
UN Charter, absolutely, yes.
Stephen says you are exactly right, Alex. Summer of 1970 says California is building infrastructure like crazy right now. My union is out of work. Lists are at historic lows. 49 billion in budget surplus. Thank you very much for that. Summer of 1970. Bill, thank you for that super chat. Cactus Ray, thank you for that super sticker. Bauke says most of Europe has eastern latitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. David says, great job, guys. Bob Anderson says, exactly, Alex and Gonzalo. It's not as Brian put it. In the U.S., this, Germany, that. It's a class of elite degenerates who rule the collective West.
Absolutely. I mean, this isn't a plan that the American people have. Nobody should think of it in those terms.
Peter says, loving this meeting of my favorite minds. Thanks again, team. Thank you, Peter, for that. William says, Putin, do note, golden billion is the real enemies.
Absolutely. I mean, coming back to that earlier question, if you're talking about the decision makers in the West, the true decision makers, you could find a big room and you could put them all in it. I mean, it's as few as that, in my opinion.
Reefy says, Diane Sayre wants Chuck E. Cheese Schumer to debate her.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Reefy. Military Views says, we are an occupied country here in Germany, Duran.
So many people in Germany tell us this.
Rhubarb Pie, thank you for that super sticker. Gus, thank you for that super sticker. Simo Bothell, Missouri says, Gonzalo, can you talk about Round Table 20 issues?
We'll have to send them to him. I can't comment on that.
Margarita, thank you for that super sticker. AD says, using unofficial NATO troops fighting in Ukraine, if anything, it is slowly dissipating what it is left of the aura of Western American armies had.
Possibly, quite possibly. To me, it's a very, very dangerous development indeed, to the extent that it's true. And sooner or later, it's bound, I think, to provoke Russian retaliation.
Margarita, thank you for that super chat. Jetset.1 says, agree with Alexander. Many that are intimidated and will not go out on the street. But I also believe that once people have nothing to lose, something has to give, as it always has been in Europe.
Yes, I accept that. I mean, after all, revolutions of the past have happened. We must never forget that. And they've happened in deeply authoritarian societies. So we mustn't forget that either. So if people are pushed hard enough and if people are awakened sufficiently, they will protest. The only question is whether they will protest this time. And I'm going to wait and see. I'm not certain that they will. At the moment, the moods, I mean, one has to fight against the accumulated fatalism and apathy, which is very powerful.
Radovid, thank you for that super sticker. Nikolai says, lots of love, brothers, from the Sicking Gender Confused California. Jax, thank you for that super chat. Denitsa says, do you guys think there is a quiet wish among ordinary people for an EU collapse in Bulgaria? A lot of us see it as a way out if it's possible.
I'm
Neighbor,
sure.
how's the mood in Greece? Is it a topic at all?
Well, it could very well be true in Bulgaria, and from what I understand, you're going to get a real change of government there, in the sense that the new Bulgarian government is indeed likely to have a different orientation on the wider geopolitical issues than the present one. That's what I've been reading. I mean, I'm not fully up to date on Bulgarian politics. As to Greek affairs, I'm going to hand them over to Greece. Whether people in Bulgaria think that, wait for the EU to collapse and we're free, I think that might be a very dangerous thing to look to gamble your hopes on. I mean, I don't think this structure is simply going to implode in that way. At least if it does, it will put up a huge fight before it goes down. About Greece, I pass it to Alex.
They're the same. Greece can't do anything. Greece is stuck in the EU.
Yeah.
It's stuck. Simo Bothell, Missouri says, wow, DeSantis planes sent to Martha's Vineyard.
There's a big story here in Britain,
Amanda
by
Cross.
the way.
Yep. North Korea needs to be brought into the SCO in some way, break the economic blockade in Syria too. What are the conditions on countries joining the SCO?
Right. Well, in terms of Syria, the Chinese have already included Syria within the Belt and Roads. So I think it's only a matter of time before they open up most of the economic connections with Syria. Bear in mind that the Russians and the Chinese do not recognize the legality of the sanctions which have been imposed on Syria. North Korea is going to be much more problematic because the Chinese, and I think they bitterly regret doing this now, went along with a lot of the UN sanctions, the US UN sanctions proposals. And since it's going to be very difficult to get the UN Security Council to lift those sanctions, they have to find ways around those. And that's going to be tough.
Mr. K. Kong, thank you for that super sticker. Alexander, thank you for that super sticker. Lotsbits says, ever read this RAND document, weakening Germany, strengthening the US?
Everybody is talking about this. I'm going to make two observations about this. Firstly, this isn't as new as some people think it is. I mean, it's been floating around for a long time. These ideas have been discussed. Maybe I should say it's because I read so much these terrible magazines and newsletters in the US that the foreign policy community churns out, that this hasn't come as big of a shock to me as it has to some others, because I've seen this before. The other thing I would say is, and I come back to what I said previously, if this is the policy, then it speaks of extraordinary nihilism. It's the US destroying its own allies who prop up its international position.
Nadia says, things will come around on those demonic globalists. The sun doesn't shine on the same dog's ass every day.
Absolutely. True enough. No, indisputable.
Enough,
Sooner or later, this project will fail. No doubt about that.
La Republic says, don't forget an Odyssey account for Lyra, for Gonzalo. Thank you very much for that. Nadia says, this is all biblical. Armor up. Thank you, Nadia, for that. And Dangerous says, Gonzalo should open up an Odyssey account. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Rob Simmer says, considering the geography, will a Russian victory leave Ukraine landlocked, thus helping to secure economic stability for the Donbass through access to the Black Sea?
I still believe that is the ultimate plan and the ultimate intention. And I also believe that that's what they will eventually do. After the retreat from Kharkiv, there are a lot more people who are skeptical about this. They think it's a more minimalist operation. I still believe myself that they will eventually go on to Odessa. The way Putin talks about Odessa, when he does talk about Odessa, which is quite often, by the way, makes it extremely difficult for me to see that he will stop before he gets to Odessa.
All right, Bitcoin Crypto says, what's up, my ninjas? The Art of Life says, it's a worldwide plan. The governments are against their own. It's not the people. I have no hate for the innocent. Thank you for that. From Andres Berzin says, what NATO soldier wants to go into Ukraine to fight? To save what exactly?
Good question. There are always some misguided people, it has to be said, and some adventurers.
Bitcoin Crypto says the Swiss franc is the GOAT fiat currency.
Yeah, for the moment.
Thank you for that. Bitcoin Crypto also says UBI, porn, shitty food, no exercise, monthly vacation, pharma pills, vitamin pills, fake meat, no guns. What am I missing? Thank you for that. Bitcoin Crypto and gaming. The Art of Life says Jacob equal to US lying on SSU is equal to Russia.
Okay.
Okay.
Not sure I follow all the connections, but yeah, okay.
Euro Gabor says Brussels overwhelmingly voted on sanctions against Hungary, while the EU is on the brink of collapse. The EU is busy punishing Orban with more than just Article 7. Winter is just around the corner.
I agree. I mean, it's a very interesting sign, I think, of how nervous they're becoming, that they're sanctioning, in effect, one of their own members.
Bitcoin Crypto says, I hate China, the country, but I have to admit China's foreign policy is so much better than the USA's.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't hate China, the country, by the way, having been there. That doesn't mean I'm not, naive about it. But the Chinese conduct a foreign policy in a rational way, which is not what you're seeing at the moment in the West.
From Bitcoin Crypto and Gaming says, enjoy using fiat. The government overlords appreciate your servitude as they print away your value you work towards.
True. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think that the way in which they've abused the fact that they have fiat currencies is astonishing and disastrous, ultimately for themselves as well.
Grieve says, I'd like to know how many civilians fled the Kharkov region into Russian-controlled regions.
Yeah, nobody has. I haven't seen any figures, and I'd be very interested to know myself.
Gus says, Alex, any chance on bringing back the Alpha Group mug on the Durant shop? Actually, I think we have it on the shop, to be honest. Lada Moreau says, did Alexander's dog come to the door just for greeting? That was so sweet and funny.
Well,
thank you for that.
Not
intimidated.
She does do that. That was Solveig, the girl.
Where am I here? Bitcoin and Crypto says, jokes on you guys. You are using Odyssey, a blockchain-powered, uncensorable social media application. Go back to YouTube then. Okay. Thank you for that. Bitcoin Crypto. Not intimidated says, do you think this will be close to over after the U.S. midterms when Republicans get a majority in Congress?
Well, we will see what the Republicans do. I do believe they will get a majority in the House, but we'll see what they do with it. I mean, as we've discussed so many times, as Robert Barnes has discussed so many times, there is no such thing as a monolith, a Republican monolith. There are many people in the Republican Party who are more sympathetic to the outlook of the administration than they are to the grassroots of their own party, and they are still strong in the Senate.
Bitcoin and Crypto says, anyone out there been watching the LBC price? It's been exploding in the past couple of months.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Bitcoin Crypto. Elena, thank you for that super sticker. Do it your own way. Thank you for that super chat. Mr. Wonderful says, Russia has been clearing out all its old Cold War equipment and supplies. Wait till it uses the good stuff.
I think they've used lots of different things, and to be straightforward about it, most of it, as far as I can see, has done its job.
C. Mavuso says, why is Mother Russia not destroying these weapons from NATO when they are being offloaded?
So many people ask this question. I mean, this is a huge question. I think, again, we have to go back to the original terms, the remit of the SMO, which limited the way in which Russia could conduct certain operations, or at least they imposed these limits on themselves, and with these latest attacks on the infrastructure, we're starting to see that erode, finally.
Zhao Rui says, goal. Thank you very much for that, Zhao Rui. Alexander says, do you think that America might give Russian oil-buying nations a stop buying Russian oil, or we will put strong sanctions on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we will get lots of threats from the US, but the fact of the matter is, they can't get by themselves without Russian oil circulating in the international markets. Janet Yellen has apparently been told that if all Russian oil exports stop, oil prices will rise to at least $190 a barrel, probably much more than that. So that is disaster figures.
And Sparky says, great work. Thank you, Sparky, for that. And that is everything.
Wow.
Thank you to Brian of the New Atlas, and thank you to Gonzalo Lira. Thank you to all the questions that we got here.
A brilliant live stream altogether, and thank you to our community as well.
Thank you. Take care.